Hi, today I want to talk about turning failure to success. So, what exactly do we mean when we think of turning failure to success? Obviously, it's the phoenix rising from the ashes. In some way, things aren't going your way, and somehow we should turn things around. But what exactly does this mean, and how do we make the most of it? The problem we have in life is that failure is inevitable. And I feel that the world we're living in tends to promote success rather than failure. And compared to any previous time, any previous epoch in history, uh, this icons of success are worse than ever before. So first of all, we have things like social media these days, things like Instagram, things like YouTube, and for example, you look up YouTube. There's people who can do amazing things. For example, I like weight training, and there's people out there. There's 70-year-old, 80-year-old men who are lifting more weights than I can lift. And they're there. They're a very small percentage of the population, but they're there. So you'll find people on YouTube who can do amazing things like lift amazing weights, perform amazing feats, for example. If you look at Instagram, there's so many incredibly beautiful looking people on Instagram. And if you look around because of the internet, if we look around, there's so many people we compare ourselves against. You see, it used to be, even 20, 30 years ago, yeah, sure, you had icons out there. You had movie stars, TV personalities, some famous writers and politicians and stuff. But by and large, in your normal run of the mill life, you had a few hundred people that you interacted with on a daily basis. You know, your neighbors, people on the bus on the way to work or school, people in work or school, people maybe you had a hobby, went to did basketball at night or badminton or something, badminton club or something, or swimming, and you met some people. Uh, you know, Relatively small number of people to compare yourself against. So this is the first big challenge we have today, is that because of the internet, things like Instagram and YouTube, you're comparing yourself with maybe a billion other people. Think about it. If you could take a sample size of a billion people, are you going to find people who are better than you? And the answer is yes. If you look now and compare yourself to other people on the internet, you'll find people who are more intelligent than you, they got a more interesting personality than you, they are prettier than you, they got a better six pack than you do, they seem to have a better social life than you have, and on every level they're better than you. And the tendency, first of all, is to look at all of this and feel like I'm a bit of a failure. That's the first thing out of the bag. The second thing is our society is so much based upon selling success. You know, you watch TV programs and everybody seems to live in a big house. And uh, what are we valorizing as a society? We valorize things like movie stars and pop stars and billionaire business people heading up to space in you know rockets shaped like penises of all things. So we're valorizing, putting value on very elite people, people who maybe have loads of money or great personalities or very beautiful looking or live in a wonderful house, etc. And these are the things that we're putting out there. And it's very easy, first of all, to compare ourselves negatively towards all these other so called successful people. The other thing is, it completely ignores the reality. You see, for every successful billionaire, there must be millions of people who are not a billionaire, obviously, who are entrepreneurs not making loads of money. For every successful musician or movie star, there's probably thousands of people who are also in the music game, the acting game, are not a success. And the way it's put out there is always as if the person just arrived. I remember some years ago listening to a radio interview where somebody was talking about Mark Zuckerberg. They were the official biographer of Mark Zuckerberg, and they were doing the biography. And some cheesy American guy, and he was talking about how Mark was in college, and then he had this brilliant idea. Next thing he became like a billionaire. And that's the way he kind of rolled it out. And I'm sure it wasn't that straightforward, and I'm sure it wasn't that simple. You know, there has to be some element of luck in these people's lives. There has to be some element of skill and hard work and dedication. And the tendency is to wash over this. I mean, for example, they'll roll out the latest new actor or actress. They're a young up and coming star. And then you look at their bio and it turns out they're 28. And they've been acting professionally since they're 15. You tell me if someone's 28 and they're acting professionally since 15, they're 13 years in their profession. That's halfway through an average career, isn't it? And yet they're the fresh new face. So the reality is we're in a society that keeps on making a big deal about success and brushing over failure. But I tell you, by and large, the people who you admire and you wish you were like them, the vast majority of those people have failed at some stage. Now, of course, not in everything. So, for example, if you watch, say, NFL, for example, NFL football, they pick these guys who are kind of super athletes. They check them out at 17 or 18 years of age. They give them a rigorous test to see how super athletish they are. And they're instant successes because, they pick super athletes. I'll give you another example. Colleges like, say, Harvard, for example, the average IQ of a Harvard college student is 140, which is basically what they call a genius level. Doesn't mean you're a genius, but it's a very, very high level, like a really, 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 really brainy level. So is it a surprise if the average Harvard student has an IQ of 140 and the average person on the planet is 100? Is it a surprise that they do really well? So the trick for Harvard is it was fairly famous. Then it goes out of its way to just take the best, the best, the best, the best, the best. And those people, even if the college education was not that great, and of course it should be great because they got the best, the best, the best teachers, obviously, but they picked the best students. And I would notice that in the education game, if you pick really good students, you're going to get really good results at the end. They'll score very good marks and they'll go to jobs and they'll probably be very efficient in their jobs, etc. So success is breeding success. So things like the NFL, things like Harvard, they're picking genetically the cream of the crop and they're going to be successful straight away. But let's say most people in general, away from, say, super duper business people, super duper sports people or academics. Let's say in the world of business or the corporate world, just the normal, you're just an ordinary man or woman and you're just doing your job, okay? And maybe you want to go up the corporate ladder, or maybe you want to be an entrepreneur. If you look at most successful people in the corporate sector, if you look at most successful people, most successful entrepreneurs, they have failed multiple times. And I feel that we're letting people down in society to a great degree by showing always success. And then when people try something, whether they try a promotion in their job, whether they try a new career, whether they try a new lifestyle, or whether they try to be an entrepreneur, whether they try to be maybe an artist, for example, and they fail, they're not ready for it. So my first piece of advice in turning failure into success is really to understand that failure is natural. A young child will keep on falling before it can walk. A young child will make gurgling sensations before it can speak. We all understand this. But somehow we think we should be super successful. And in our society, we keep on picking the super successful people, whether it's that they failed before and we just hide it and have this glossy picture of who they are, which is what tends to happen in biographies and stuff of famous people. Or in certain cases, like I can give an example of Harvard NFL, where you just pick super elite people for certain things like sports and academic success, for example. The point is, you're going to fail. How else could you not? If you do something for the first time, it's very unlikely that you're going to be great at it. So usually, you're going to have to fail and you have to learn. So the key to turning failure into success is first of all understanding that failure is natural. You are going to fail and then you're going to succeed. And a nice analogy, which I've heard before, is this idea of the autopilot on airplanes. And that the autopilot on airplanes, that the planes are never quite going the right direction. The plane is kind of going like this. It's kind of all over the place. And it keeps auto-correcting. And that's what failure really is. And we have to change our mind regarding failure. So the two big challenges of failure, first of all, is we're looking at society where, thanks to the internet, we can observe a lot of people. And the simple fact is, you're going to find a lot of people who are usually better than you at a lot of stuff. That's the first thing. The second thing is that society tends to gloss over things and make a big deal about certain people. And they either gloss over the failure or those people are just geniuses. Okay? Uh, but the reality is, for the ordinary person, for the 99.9999% of people, for the 999,000 people out of a million, okay, the 999,000 people out of a million, you're going to fail. All right? There's only 1 million people who's super successful all the time. And it's okay to fail. And that's how we learn. We learn by failing. So the first thing of turning failure to success is to realize we are failing upwards. We are failing forwards. And the reality is that it's like, I like this idea with computer science. You have this idea of iteration. So you try it once and then you change, that's an iteration. And then you make a change, another iteration, another iteration, another iteration. So we try things, and when things fail, rather than getting all upset, because people are now primed to be like this, people are kind of primed for a society where success is projected, but there's no kind of structure for understanding failure. Okay? And because of that, you get a lot of people have a go at something and then they feel deeply hurt when it doesn't go their way. Like most entrepreneurs, for example. I mean, I've done some entrepreneurial things over the years and I've by and large failed or semi-failed. I mean, failure means you lose your shirt. Semi-failing means you're turning over money, but you're working 60 to 70 hours a week to just about get by, and you kind of think, why am I doing this? So most entrepreneurs are not really successful, and most successful entrepreneurs went through stages of failure, complete failure, and then to stages of before they get to the successful stage. Okay, so you're failing forward. You're failing towards success. The only way you can achieve anything is by trying things. And that's what we have to see. And we have to realize that society is not prepared us for this. Society is just picking people who look cool and putting them in front of us. Okay? And also a lot of people who are doing well, they market themselves as doing better. You know, we've probably seen these things in like Instagram, like some of these Instagram beauties are not as beautiful as you realize, all the Photoshop and all this stuff, okay? So people are projecting an image of themselves, which quite frankly is not real. And that's also part of marketing, and part of succeeding in life is creating an image. And that's the second thing I'd like to say. First of all, is we're failing forwards. There's no such thing as I fail, I'll just jump off the building now. No, you're failing forwards. Every time you fail, you learn something. The second thing I'd like to share is that it's normal for people, successful people, to project an image and not to be upset when you find out that people who are famous or successful have kind of manipulated things a bit. They're basically presenting an image. And you might feel at first when you find this out that they're liars and they're cheats. But if you get deeper into it, you realize it's all just part of branding, and branding is normal and part of success. And it's normal for people when they're successful. Two things. One, they don't want people to criticize them, so they're going to put their best foot forward. And making yourself look better will probably make you more successful. I mean, for example, as I make this video, it's now August 2021, about the last month or so, we had 2 billionaires heading into space with Jeff Bezos. And we also had Richard Branson, okay, heading off into space. And probably the reason why they're heading into space and why Elon Musk is not heading into space is that they need to prove themselves. Elon Musk is very successful with his, like, so many missions he's had back and forth to the ISS and all this stuff, the space station. He doesn't need to prove anything. People know that his business model works, his rockets work. But nobody really knows, although Jeff Bezos is the owner of Amazon, hugely successful man. Richard Branson owns Virgin Group and the airlines and all that. But they're not successful in their space business. Nobody knows about them. So by going to space, it's a way of validating themselves and saying, hey, look, yeah, we're really successful, we're in space. It's marketing. That's why they went. They went to market. They didn't really go, I mean, probably it's a bit of a joyride, but really they went to go market their business. And that's also part of success is marketing, okay? So the first thing is realize that we are failing forward. The second thing is realize is that some of the bullshit that you'll find that people are doing to make themselves look larger than life is kind of necessarily part of marketing yourself in the business world. So we have to change our attitude if we want to turn failure into success. And the other thing is the third thing I'd like to add here is often failure is nearly a success. I remember, for example, some years ago, I come from Ireland, so at the time, back in the Irish rugby team, there was a new manager came in, and the Irish team had done really badly. And the new manager came in, and he took a video of one of their failed matches and showed them all the mistakes they made, and they made something like 64 mistakes in his opinion. And he said that the other side made 60 mistakes. So they made four more mistakes than the other side. So what he's kind of saying, I mean, it's not a perfect analogy, but he's kind of saying was, you just failed a bit more than they failed. Okay? A tiger on average will have 10 attacks to get one win. 10 times it will attack another animal, and one time it will win, it will eat the animal. That means 90% of the time it fails. We look at the top, say, baseball players in the world, again, same thing. 95% of the time they miss. So, in everything, failure is a natural part of the process. And it's what we think about failure, and also to realize that often we're nearly there. So, when you look at your failure, you have to think, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? We have to have a bit of a post-mortem on the ways that we failed. Because if you keep on ruthlessly, objectively looking at your failures and taking your ego out of it, then you can start seeing, well, I did this right, and I'll keep that. And it is wrong, I get rid of that. And the last thing I want to say about failing for success, or turning failure into success, is that, strange though it may seem, you might look and say a lot of billionaire business people and successful people in life think they got big egos. But the strange thing is, to be really a success, unless you're just lucky, and some people are just lucky, okay? But the majority of people have become successful by failing, and successful by learning from their failures, which means you have to be humble, okay? So, for example, let's say you take somebody, they're managing director or CEO of a company, and there's 1,000 people working in that company. And one way you could say they're over that 1,000 people. But another way you could say that they are submissive to that 1,000 people, because they've got to persuade 1,000 people to work for them. If you're the boss of a company with 100,000 people, you have to persuade 100,000 people. This is my experience of meeting managing directors and CEOs. The vast majority of managing directors and CEOs I've met do not have a big ego. I don't see that. A matter of fact, I would say the majority of managing directors and CEOs that I meet are humble people. I know that might sound paradoxical. And of course, it might be a bit counterintuitive, because often they live in big houses and have nice cars, and they have PAs and people like that running after them. And it could be very easy to look on a superficial level and think that these people are, big cheeses. And on certain ways they are big cheeses, and some of them show it off and some of them don't. But the point is, they all have the humility to look at their situation and learn from their mistakes, because everybody makes mistakes. Every business person makes mistakes, every entrepreneur makes mistakes, every corporate tycoon makes mistakes, every ordinary person makes mistakes. And even artists and actors and singers, they make mistakes too, and they have to learn. We all have to learn from our mistakes. And the biggest part of turning failure into success is learning from your mistakes. And to do that, you have to take your ego out of the driving seat, and you have to learn. I really liked growing up, and I still like today, those old Rocky movies, which there seems to be 500,000 of them. What I like about Rocky is there's always this emphasis on humility. I think it was Rocky 3 was the one where Rocky's become very successful, and then his manager gets a heart attack and dies, and Mr. T knocks him out and all this stuff. And he then ended up getting trained by Carl Weathers, and who used to be the guy who's fighting the Apollo Creed guy. And in that one, for example, he's very vulnerable. If you have a chance, watch the movie. It's a great movie, because we see his vulnerability and we see his humility. He's forced to be humble because he gets swallowed by success and he loses his way. By the end of the movie, his arc, he finds his way again. And this is really what learning from this is really what learning from failure is all about, is that we fail forward and we have the ego to realize I must take my ego, put it back. I must use my ego, my personality, to say, ooh, I better lower my personality. I have to lower the volume on my internal sound box of my dialogue, my inner dialogue. I have to quieten it down and I have to listen. I have to listen to what other people have to say. I have to go back and look at what I did and what I didn't do. I need to talk to people. I need to listen to those people because I did something wrong and I need to learn what it was and I need to change it. And that's the real key. The real key is that self-reflectivity and the humility to learn from your failures. Okay? Now there's a flip side to all this. I think, for example, the cockiness of a lot of big business people, you don't succeed in life without confidence. But you don't learn from failure without humility. And of course, they are not mutually exclusive. You can be confident and you can be humble at the same time. So that's what I'd like to say tonight, or today, is don't compare yourself with other people. A lot of marketing out there, huge number of people to compare yourself against. Don't compare. You're running your race, not somebody else's race. And it is perfectly fine to fail. And most people fail, and we fail forward. We can't succeed without failure. But failure on its own is useless unless we can learn from it, and we can't learn from it unless we're humble enough to put our ego out of the driving seat for a little while. And then we have another go, we put our ego back into the driving seat when we need to go and have another go. And this is how we learn from failure. This is how we turn failure into success, because failure is near success. It's success minus something. And the other thing, the final thing I would say, the final thing I say, is the willingness to persevere, because a lot of people try something and it fails. But to try something and it fails and try again and again and again and keep learning and adjusting, that's what's required. Because you don't know, maybe you're going to be successful first time you try something. Maybe it's going to take you 4 or 5 goes at something to become successful. Okay? And the final thing I would say is it's a journey. You know, if you stop being too competitive and start thinking of it as a journey, and that each failure is a lesson, but also a little voyage somewhere, a little voyage in a particular direction. And you know something, if you don't give up and you keep trying to learn, you keep applying yourself, even those failures going back quite a few years are little islands of success in their own way. You learn something in the process. Maybe you build something in the process. It all adds to your portfolio. It all adds to who you are, makes you what you are, who you are. And you learn from these things, okay? So for example, in my own case, the first book I wrote, I presently have 18 books on Amazon, you can check them out. First book I wrote was 2013, although I didn't release it to 2016. And that book was really, really hard to write because I had no idea how to begin. And I, obviously after writing 18 books, I know a lot more. My books still aren't as successful as I want them to be. There's many little flaws at the time. Like my editing of my books is not good, for example. I want to do more books, and hopefully I'll get back to them. But I do see a voyage and a learning curve from 2013 to now, and it's not finished. I need to learn more, and it's also part of my voyage to this, my career. Okay, so just say, okay, so that's what we have to do. Do not compare. We're learning, we're failing forward. We have to be humble in learning our lessons. We have to persevere. And we have to see everything as a journey. Have a think about that. And as long as your heart is in it, always check your heart. Is your heart still in it? As long as your heart is still in it, whatever it is, it's a career, it's a relationship, it's a passion, it's entrepreneurial, it's academia, it's whatever you want to do, sports, whatever it is. Whatever you want to do, if you failed at it, your heart is still in it, then have a go. And keep failing towards success, turning that failure into success. It will happen over time if you keep persevering. Hope you like and subscribe. If you like it and then subscribe. And I'll talk to you next time.